you able to get Jim or no? Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the public hearing on Local Law 1. I will first ask folks if they could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Councilmember Ash McPherson, why don't you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Ash McPherson. We'll do a quick roll call. Councilmember Gully is not here yet. Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Here.
Councilmember Steele.
Present.
Councilmember Cummings.
Present.
Councilmember Zalewski.
I'm here.
Councilmember McDermott.
Here.
And Council President Mantello is here. We have 6 present, 1 absent. And just so folks are aware, tonight's Local Law 1 public hearing. Mara, can you just read the, not the notice, but the title of the legislation, please?
I can read the first sentence of the notice because that's all I have printed right now.
That's okay.
Which is public hearings shall be held regarding a local law to amend Section C 48H3 of the Charter of the City of Troy to authorize installment agreements for the payment of eligible delinquent taxes over a term of 36 months.
Awesome.
And this is the first of 3 public.
Yep.
Council President.
Yes, Councilmember Zalewski.
I move that the council resolve itself into a committee of the whole for the purpose of conducting a public hearing.
And I thank you for that, Councilmember Zalewski. The clerk read the publication. And I guess, Mari, you do have to read the notice.
Okay, it's a long one because it's got all our COVID stuff in it. Public hearings shall be held regarding a local law to amend Section C 48H3 of the Charter of the City of Troy to authorize installment agreements for the payment of eligible delinquent taxes over a term of 36 months. Said public hearings shall be held on Thursday, April 22nd at 5:45 p.m., Thursday, April 29th at 5:45 p.m., and Thursday, May 6th at 6:45 p.m. Due to the current COVID-19 crisis and pursuant to Governor Andrew Cuomo's Executive Order number 202.1, this meeting shall be held remotely via video conference and live streamed on the City Council's YouTube channel. Troy residents who wish to comment during the public hearing must have the ability to join the Zoom meeting by a computer or phone and will be required to pre-register for the meeting. The link to register for the meeting will be posted at least 24 hours before the meeting on the council agenda and minutes page and sent out through the city clerk's public notices email list. You must register for the hearing by 3 p.m. on the day of the hearing. Per the city council, written comments will not be read aloud at this hearing, but will be added to the hearing minutes. Written comments should be sent to mara.drogan@troyny.gov and must be received by 3 p.m. on the day of the hearing. You must include your full name and residential address as required by council rules. Written comments received after 3 p.m. shall be treated as correspondence and forwarded to the council for their review.
Thanks, Mara. And in the future, we can delete the COVID being announced during the public hearing just for the sake of moving forward. And I'll open up the public hearing as mentioned, the rules of the chair pursuant to section 2.34 of the special rules of the Troy City Council. We just ask that folks state their name and address, and I'll open it up. Do we have anyone, Mara?
We had 2 people who said they wanted to speak, but they have not joined the meeting, and they may have really meant to join the finance meeting and not the public hearing, but they are not logged in at the present time.
Thank you. I did have a couple of folks who were confused, and they reached out to me and asked, are we joining the public hearing? Are we joining the finance? And I explain the two. So if they log back in, we can hook them up for the finance. Okay?
Yeah, they are also signed up to speak at the,
At the finance. Okay. We'll give it maybe 30, 40 more seconds and then I'll take a motion to adjourn and we'll be back on in about 5 minutes. Okay. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilmember Zaluski. Do we have a second? Councilmember Ash McPherson. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, the hearing is closed and I'll see you all in about 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Thanks. All right. I know Councilmember Cummings and I are here. Kim, were you able to get Councilmember Gully?
Mara, can you send Jim the link again? He's having an issue with it.
Okay, we'll give 2
I
minutes.
just resent it to him literally 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, I
Thank you,
just hung
Mara.
up the phone with him 30 seconds ago.
Okay, I'll resend it again. Tell him to check his spam folder.
He's having an issue with the spam. There you are, Jim. Welcome back.
I am here finally. Hey, Maura, are you on? I know you are.
He's here.
Spam.
I'm going to bring down this laptop, and I think between you, I, and this computer guy, somebody's going to show me how to stop you from going to spam all the time. Because when I try to pull it out of spam, it
Okay.
doesn't highlight to click to join, so I have to kind of copy numbers and paste. So, and I'm not very.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank
All
you
right.
for joining us.
Just come down and Quinn and I will help you out.
I'll bring down my paperwork I owe you, and we'll take care of that, so I don't have to go through this every meeting.
All right.
Okay.
We'll get rolling. Okay, thank you for joining us, folks. We are going to open the finance meeting. It's April 22nd. It's 6:04, not too bad. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Councilmember Steele to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Steele. We'll do a quick roll call. Councilmember Gully,
Here.
Councilmember Ash McPherson,
Here.
Councilmember Steele,
Present.
Councilmember Cummings,
Present.
Councilmember Zaluski,
Here.
Councilmember McDermott,
Here.
and Council President Mantello is here. We have all 7 present. Also with us this evening, we have Mayor Madden, I believe. There he is. We have Andy. Congratulations to Andy Petrusky, a new daddy. Congratulations, Andy. Woo!
Thank you.
Are you getting any sleep?
Depends on the night.
I remember those days. Fun, enjoy. Believe me, they end up in college way too quick and end up too old. And also with us, we have Brian Owens, our chief, and Steve Strikeman is with us from planning. So approval of the minutes, I'll take a motion to approve the prior minutes to
I'll
the.
make a motion that we approve the minutes as produced.
Thank you, Councilmember Zaluski. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson. Discussion on the approval of the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0. Presentation of the agenda. We have a number of items. I know there's a number of folks that plan to speak at the public forum. We have about 5 or 6 ordinances. I do want to note for the record, Ordinance 27 has been withdrawn by the administration. They plan to work on that a little bit more. And then we have a number of resolutions. So we'll get it right underway. Rick Morrissey has also joined us, our corporation counsel, and we'll go right into the public forum. And we have a number of folks who have signed up. Mara, do you want to open our room and get some folks in our room for the public hearing. I believe,
So I'm going to mostly go in the order on the list, but I did want to let Michael Barrett speak first because he was the very first person to register and the very first person to log in tonight. So I'm going to move Michael Barrett up so he can speak and then after him will be Rafael Varela and Angela Baylor.
Council President,
yes, Councilmember Zaluski.
I'd just like to recommend that we had 3 people that were logged in originally, which
Yes,
was Michael Barrett, Mandy Buchanan, and Tallulah Patch. I'd like to recommend that we allow those 3 to speak first and then go with the alphabetical list.
that would be great. I have no problem with that. And Mara, can you arrange that? Mara, you're good with that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And you said the names again. You said Mandy Buchanan and
Tallulah Patch?
who, Ken?
Tallulah Patch.
She did not sign up to speak.
Okay.
She did not sign up to.
Okay, so then just Michael Barrett and Mandy Buchanan.
Very good. Hello, Michael Barrett. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the City Council Finance.
Good evening, Madam President, esteemed members of the council. I assume for the sake of the record, I'm Executive Director of Hudson Mohawk Industrial Gateway, located here at the Burden Iron Works Museum in South Troy, and I reside at 14 Viewpoint Drive in the High Point section of Lansingburg. As you know, there is a proposal we have made to the city some years back. Slowly but surely, we've been working our way toward this. And now, through the extreme generosity of a sugar daddy who I am not at liberty to disclose just yet, we have a very large sum of money to move the remnant of that steam-powered generator on what you guys refer to as the Skolite site. I'm sorry, I'm an old guy. I still call it the Rensselaer Iron Works. But it is the last remnant of a steam-powered generator that really did power an awful lot of the hot metal industry here in Troy. This piece has been very badly plundered by the scrappers over the years. There's only a fraction of it left, but if you will, it's very much like going to see the Museum of Natural History. You know, the skin and the soft parts may be gone, but the skeleton of that Tyrannosaurus Rex is still mighty impressive to look at. And the remnants to this generator is still pretty neat for those of us who are industrial history geeks. And so we're very much interested in taking possession of this. My understanding is the city would like the generator gone in order to make the property shovel ready for development. And we have the money to do it. We're in the process. We've had Albany Engineering come down and do some preliminary drawings of what would be needed on our property to have the generator reinstalled properly. We have put out requests for interest to a number of general contractors on that. We're starting to get responses. I mean, if you guys are ready to go, we're ready to buy it from you. I was joking with a couple of board members today about the local law that's being discussed, and they asked me if I should ask for a payment plan, you know, for the, yes, thank you for chuckling. Yes, I'll write you a check for $1. I think we can handle that. So, I mean, we're very excited at the possibility of taking possession of this. If you guys are prepared to let it go, we would be delighted to take it off your hands.
Well, thank you, Michael Barrett. And I obviously can't speak for the full council, but I think you may have a bargain there. And check, make sure you show up in 2 weeks, okay?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And if you want, I'll even double the price.
No, this is exciting though, and we're excited about this, Michael. Thank you.
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
Michael, will you be staying on for the discussion, or should I ask you a question now?
You can ask him now.
It's not really in general order to ask questions right now, but I just wanted,
Okay.
are you sticking around, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll wait.
Go ahead right now. It's fine, honestly.
Okay, I just wanted to check in what the policies of the Hudson Mohawk Industrial Gateway are in terms of making sure this stays around for the people of Troy in the long term, and a future board wouldn't decide to scrap it or whatever. I assume that wouldn't happen, but I wanted to know what your policies on that front are.
Well, under New York state law, as soon as something comes into our possession, whether by gift or purchase, it belongs to the people of the state of New York. And it takes a tremendous amount to de-accession anything from a collection. It took us 4 years to get State Education Department, who does charter us, to agree to let us sell the excess rototiller collection, the Garden Way Troy built rototiller collection. I mean, 4 years where they all agreed we had way too much. It is not an easy process. It's a beast.
Great to hear.
So if it comes here, it's staying here.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. We're really excited about this partnership. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Anytime. All right. Next on the list, we have, I believe, Buchanan. I'm not sure of the first name. Hold on one sec. I apologize.
Andy Buchanan.
Andy Buchanan. Thank you, Mara. Andy, are you with us?
It's Mandy.
Mandy, I'm so sorry. Mandy.
No worries.
Thank
No
you.
worries.
I just saw your name. Thank you so much for joining us. You are now with the Finance Committee and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys. I just wanted to voice my opinion in support of transferring funds from within the 2021 general fund to be used for the hiring of the 6 police officers. That's to be discussed tonight. Troy does need more presence and visibility of our police in our communities to not only keep our streets safe, but to build the relationships with the neighbors and business owners. Now more than ever, we do need those relationships to be built. The last year has been heart-wrenching due to some of the crimes that have been committed, especially the ones that involve the kids. Hiring of the officers would be a step in the right direction. And what better way to begin to show more officers engaging with our residents to bridge that divide that we have. Officers walking the beat, interacting with us, building community relationships. It's crucial to the Troy becoming the city we want to live in. Consider using those funds to help the citizens of Troy stay safe, build relationships, and to help alleviate the strain of our current police force. And that's really all I had to say.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you. Next, we have Rafael Varela. We'll just give it a minute. Hi, Rafael. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, let's see if you can hear me now.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Rafael. You're with the Finance Committee. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I would like to say that I sent an email to everybody yesterday in the City Council and the Mayor and the Chief of Police, but apparently, I don't know if you are aware, there must have been some technical problems with your mail server because all the emails, all of them got sent back to me with an error. I believe some city council members were aware of it, and I hope that has been fixed. And I did send the email a few minutes ago again, or 20 minutes ago. I'm just saying this to inform you that there may be other people who emailed you yesterday and may have not been able to get through. So that being said, I would like to speak in opposition of hiring more police officers. I think the public opinion during all the meetings with the PRRC, there were a lot of people who spoke, and everybody was against expanding the police department. There were a lot of reasons, a lot of witnesses that explain why we don't need more police, but we need to improve community relationships. And if you are honest about improving community relationships, I believe you could hire social workers that have studied the science of social relationships instead of police officers who have very little training. They will be trained for 6 months by an institution that has issues of systemic racism at its core. And I would like to speak now as a minority that I am in this city. I am a person with a very heavy accent. I am a foreigner and I am a Latino. And I am speaking from experience in this city that community police officers do not work, because the way they work is that our neighbors, which a lot of them have very deep racist and xenophobic beliefs that they don't even realize, they will call the police and other city departments oftenly on us, on minorities. We, the minorities, usually do not call on white people constantly about little stupid things, but they do. And then what happens is the community officer is like, I'm sorry, but I have a lot of complaints about you. So now we have created a system by which this community officer, even if he is not being racist, now he is de facto implementing a racist system because our racist neighbors are calling on us. I will give you an example. If a branch of my tree is going over to my neighbors, code enforcement has come, threatened me, and forced me to cut that branch, telling me that is illegal. Now, when the branch from my neighbor is over the fence on my roof, I don't ask him to cut it. I don't call code enforcement. I don't call the police on him. I go and I cut the branch. And he calls the police on me. The police came and threatened me to stop or arrest me. And like this circumstance, I can tell you many, many more. Many, many more. And if you wanted to read, I did file a lawsuit against the city in 2010, and there are many pages of different actions 10 years ago, before there was.
Raphael, you have about 45 seconds, okay?
So it is a reality. Here in Little Italy, they try to pass a community, be a good neighbor pamphlet that we had to stop, because among other things said to be a good neighbor, do not barbecue on the street, which is in itself a very racist statement, because you white people do not barbecue on the street, but other people from other cultures like to barbecue on the street. So this is an example of a well-intentioned
I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, okay, Raphael? If you could wrap it up, please, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's an example of a well-intentioned something some people in the community was trying to do, which it is not it is racist in itself, you know, to try to tell us it is not being a good neighbor for barbecuing on the street. And this kind of actions is what will happen once you put community officers without having any specific strategies about what are they going to do.
Okay, thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us, Raphael. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night. Okay, next on the list, Mara, we have Angela Beeler.
And Jen, after Angela, just see who's logged in here. Carlo Soriento, Ellie Irons, and then Eric Wisher will be after them.
Hello, everyone.
Angela, thank you for joining us. You're with the Finance Committee and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. So I'm here also to speak on Ordinance 23. So we've been hearing from a diverse group of voices within the PRRC process, describing that the trust, if any, in this city was thin, and that this process alone further eroded that trust. Now, only 2 weeks later, it feels like there's a rush to put through a proposal on recommendation number 16. The only proposal that involves adding more budget and more police to an already oversized police force. The claims on Carmela Montello's Facebook post suggest that this funding is for community policing, though I don't see that term at all in the ordinance as it's written in the agenda right now, so that could be something to clarify. And my understanding is there isn't even a job description for what a community police officer does. Community policing is one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot to make policing sound warm and fuzzy, policing that brings ice cream and shows up at your basketball games. But the problem is that a system with poverty and racial inequity, where our city is structurally underfunding services and supports for our neighborhoods and communities. Policing, and I'll quote Philip McHarris, will, quote, always expose Black people and other marginalized communities to higher rates of surveillance, arrest, and violence. Now, following your thought process, or what I imagined it to be, because there aren't dialogues happening with residents on these matters before they pop up on the agendas, the effectiveness of community policing would be fundamentally based on trust, the very trust that you and your administration repeatedly erode by not having these conversations or listening to people when they come before you. Hypothetically, if you are indeed interested in pursuing the hypothesis, which I'm curious what the data is, what all this is being based upon, why not rearrange the tasks of current police officers to fill the roles of community policing and see what happens? Ultimately, I'm asking you, as many of us are, not to add more police officers, not to increase an already bloated police budget. Let us see what happens in the verdict on systemic racism in the TPD by one of your own officers, Christopher Jones. You said you'd get a task force together on diversion within a month. What's going on with that? And many of your force deny the existence of systemic racism. So how about investing to deal with that? And to Raphael's point, both Kim Potter, the murderer of Dante Wright, and Derek Chauvin, the murderer of George Floyd, were field training officers in Minnesota. So in this current policing system, I'm not sure who we can trust to be training new cops and putting them on the street so that these actions don't happen, like with Edson Thevenin. So I just feel if you need a list of action items, of places to apply funding to support the people of the city, you know, you could hire a grant writer, get more money for the city to deal with things like putting more lights up in the city streets where there aren't any. Bringing grocery stores to our food deserts, address the needs of children, poverty, hunger, giving kids places to play and things to do, build the community centers that so many have been calling for years, invest in Troy-centered mental health services, begin the process of reallocating resources and building other forms of first response to domestic abuse, mental health calls, traffic stops, drug overdoses, supporting houseless people, and more. And lastly, you could use those funds to support funding, subpoena power for the Police Oversight Review Board that y'all told us was too expensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening. Okay, next on the list, hold on one second. Next, we have Carlo, or I apologize. We have, I believe, Irons.
No, Carlos Sorrento.
Oh, okay. I had Ellie Irons, Eric Wisher. I'll go by the list then. So Carlo Sorrento is next. Hello, Carlo.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you for joining us. You're with the Finance Committee, and you have 5 minutes to address the finance.
All right, thank you. I want to thank you, President Mantello, and Jim Gully and Kim Asher-Pearson with working with the administration to bring together 6 new community police officers in the city of Troy. I think this is very beneficial for the city of Troy. I think it'll bring integrity and trust with the community members, with the Troy Police Department, with our residents, and especially our youth. I also want to thank the Troy Police Department for their dedication and unwavering support, and for going out every day and leaving their families to protect the families of Troy and the citizens of Troy. I also would like to let them know that what's going on in the news and with politicians and community leaders talking about defunding the police and abolishing the police. I think to be a police officer, it's a tough time, but just to let you know that the silent majority of us that are law-abiding citizens and innocent victims, we all stand beside you, and we commend you for your service. And I will tell you that those people, all they are doing are supporting long life criminals. And I just want to say thank you for letting me speak. I want to thank the Troy Police Department for everything that they do. And I believe that hiring these 6 new officers will be great for the city of Troy. And God bless Troy and God bless America. And thank you, Carmela, for letting me speak.
No problem. Thank you, Carlo. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Next, we have Shell Miller. Ellie Irons.
Phil Miller is not logged in. Ellie is the next person who is logged in.
Okay, Ellie, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
For the opportunity to speak today.
No problem. You are with the City Council Finance Committee, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm talking to you today in the wake of a peaceful demonstration celebrating the life of Edson Thevenin here in Troy on Saturday, followed by Tuesday's historic verdict for police accountability and the horrific news of the death of 16-year-old Makia Bryant at the hands of police in Columbus, Ohio. This moment is fraught. It is not the moment to add more police to the Troy Police Department. When I learned that today this council would be considering hiring 6 new community police officers, I heaved a huge sigh of consternation and distress. It boggles the mind to think that the city's response to the admittedly rushed and inadequate PRRC process would be to propose hiring more officers. These last months, so many of our community members, many of them are Black and brown neighbors, clearly expressed the need for other resources outside of policing. More police do not help them feel safe. They do not help me feel safe. On the topic of finance, what else could this money be spent on? So things Angela just mentioned, subpoena power. If Troy has dollars to add 6 new police officers, why not a community center in North Central? Why is the city investing more in policing instead of investing those funds in measures to reduce inequity, which we know reduces crime? Invest in so-called crime, invest in youth activities, invest in safe and affordable housing, invest in mental health services. We know this works. As Bob Blackman of the Justice Center made clear during the PRRC public forums, we have adequate police numbers in Troy. They might need to be distributed differently, but we certainly don't need more. We might even have too many. To quote from his testimony, I went online and found a very interesting report on the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program. That document stated that for a city our size, there are an average of 2 police officers per 1,000 residents. Using that number based on 433 cities nationwide, we would have 100 police officers. We currently have about 130. That's the end of the quote. So Troy may already have too many officers. Like Angela just pointed out, consider redistributing those officers first and experiment with so-called community policing before we commit to having 6 new police officers, which means we're also on the hook for everything that goes along with that into the future of policing in Troy, which also means pensions. So we're committing the tax base to that kind of spending when we don't have the money to make our city more equitable through other means. So regardless, I strongly believe, along with many of my neighbors, that we don't need more armed city workers on the streets. It just leads to the kinds of heartbreaking scenarios that we've been seeing again and again. And yeah, guns in the hands of cops kill. Thank you for your time, and please, please don't do this.
Thank you for joining us, Ellie. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Next, I see Carolyn Skripczak has joined us, but I believe that that's for the meeting, correct, Mara?
Yeah, that's correct. Eric Wisher's now.
Thank you very much. Eric, we will wait to join us, and Ellie is leaving us, and where is he? Hello, Eric Wisher. Thank you for joining us. You're with the Troy City Council Finance Committee. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
You sure can. Thanks for joining us, Eric. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I'd like to speak in favor of the proposition to add 6 community police officers to the ranks of the Troy Police Department. I got a letter here I've written. I'm going to email you all. It says Mayor Patrick Madden, Troy City Council members, Carmelo Mantello, President, Jim Gully, District 1, Kamash McPherson, District 2, Sue Steele, District 3, and Asha Cummins, District 4, Ken Zalewski, President Pro Tem, District 5, and Eileen McDermott, District 6. The Troy Uniform Firefighters Association would like to support the implementation of 6 more community police officers in the Troy Police Department. These officers would be an asset to the neighborhoods that they would work in, walking and talking with people in the neighborhood, building relationships and trust with members of our community. We know these are difficult times for police relations, but community policing is a perfect way for our police officers to interact with our citizens on an individual basis as they walk the streets of each police zone. Public safety in both police and fire departments should be of the utmost importance to the city and its citizens. With the ever-growing calls for service in the city, the proper staffing of the community police section of the Troy Police Department is an area of good expansion of police protection to build these relationships in the community. That being said, we ask that you support bipartisanly the addition of 6 new community police officers. Very truly yours, Eric Wisher, President of Troy UFA, Local 86. A safe community is going to want to bring people here, and we're in a very hot market right now for sales of homes. So people need to feel safe here when they're looking at buying a home, and we think that this is a way we support the police in this endeavor. We see the results of the 2 officers we have when we're out in the streets with them, and we think it's a very good use of the money to be spent to allocate 2 officers for every zone. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Eric, and have a wonderful night. Thank you.
You also. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
You got it. All right. Next on our list.
I forgot to say the next 3 who are logged in. They're Julia Cadeau, Kylie Spinelli, and Rhea Drysdale.
Okay, Julia, I believe, is joining us. Okay, Julia, thank you for joining us. I'll wait for you to officially log in here. Thank you for joining us, Julia. You're with the Tri-State Council of Finance. Are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes and welcome.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Julia Kaju. I'm a new resident of Troy. I bought a home in the hot market of Troy. So it's pertinent to our last speaker and their remarks about how important it is for people coming here as part of the housing surge to feel safe. And I take issue with that because yes, I bought a home here and I'm raising 2 children now in Troy. And in my neighborhood surrounding Washington Park, a private park in a city with very limited green space, makes no sense to me, but that's a issue for another time. I, as a nice white lady, do feel safe in my immediate block and neighborhood and feel fairly confident that my 2 white children will be safe walking and riding their bikes around the neighborhood that we live in. But that's not good enough for me, because when I walk 1 block further south, suddenly I'm in a community full of more Black and brown folks. And I know that those mothers and those children are not feeling as safe as me. And I don't think that more cops on the beat are going to make them feel any safer. So while I might benefit from the privilege of my home address and white skin, I know that in our other communities, that's not the case for everyone. So I've scrapped my prepared remarks for tonight because I am reacting to the unfolding scenario that is happening at Albany South Station tonight, and the fact that peaceful protesters who were occupying the space outside the police station there have now been dispersed and violently dispersed. Some of them arrested, some of them sent to the hospital. And I know that some Schenectady police are there in support. Perhaps Troy PD is also there in support of the Albany PD tonight. And I wonder the same thing that Angela brought up tonight. What does trust and listening from the police force really mean? When peaceful protesters were occupying a space and asking for discussion and asking for face-to-face communication with police, that was one of their demands, and the police refused. So what does listening from a police department mean? Yes, I feel confident that 6 more police officers on the beat walking around will chat with me, will be polite to me. I'm a nice white lady. Of course they will be. But I am not confident that they will show that same restraint or respect or equity with my Black and brown neighbors. And why should I or the BIPOC folks that live in the city of Troy have any faith that that is what community policing will look like? It's not happening in Albany. It's not happening tonight as we speak. It doesn't happen in the city of Troy. And so I'm wondering what these officers will actually be doing. If my kids are out riding bikes without their helmets on, will they get a friendly warning from a community police officer? Will a Black boy out riding his bike around the city of Troy without a helmet on get a citation, get a fine? Will these community police officers be multilingual? Will they be trained in ASL? Will they be trained in mental health interventions? There are so many unknowns here that do not make me feel any more safe or like having any more trust and faith in the Troy Police Department. So I'm going to echo what others have said tonight and ask that if this is truly something that the council moves forward with and thinks is a good idea, reallocate the staff and the resources that you already have. Put 6 of your officers in this community policing role, test it out, gather data, do the training, and figure out what this really means and what good it can do for our communities before you take on the salaries and the pensions of 6 new officers. Thank you. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Thank you for joining us this evening. Have a good night. All right, next on the list, Mara, bear with me. We have, hold on, I do have it, Kylie Spinelli. Hello, Kylie. Thank you.
Hi.
Here with the City Council Finance Committee. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome.
So like the speaker before me, I'm still in absolute shock at what I watched Albany and New York State Police and other agencies just do to peaceful occupation outside of the South Station in Albany. And I don't really want to be sitting here on this meeting with you all, talking to you all and reiterating the same things myself and countless other residents of Troy have said to you, just to have a lot of you smile and nod on the live stream and then turn around and do exactly what we're not asking you to do, what we're telling you not to do. So with that said, I strongly oppose the ordinance for transferring funds to allow for the hiring of 6 additional police officers. And I need to make that clear because a lot of people seem to be misinformed. The ordinance does not call them community police. The ordinance only says hiring 6 new police officers. And I have to say, and with all due respect, Carmela, you're misleading the people of Troy by publicly asserting that these are community police, which is fluffing the truth. They're just hiring more police. These police that we have said, or not even me, this is the first time I've spoken to you guys in a long time. My neighbors have said to you, assault and traumatize the community. So I can't believe that we have to have this conversation again after the members of the community poured their hearts out in meetings and rallies in the streets, sharing their ideas and their traumatic experiences surrounding policing. And even after the sham of the PRRC and your its pathetic, disappointing report, whoever proposed this has the nerve to try to sneak in increasing the police budget and the number of officers, even though you've said you've listened to the community talk about allocating money to other needs, which we've stated are not police, but programs for youth, mental health and substance use, street lights, which are so simple, housing, food security. The police got $712,000 something added to their budget this year. They don't need any more. Like, if you were going to add more money, you should have done it on the budget. This shouldn't be another option or another question when councils sit and mull over these suggestions that their community members have had and shoot a lot of them down because, oh, we don't have the funding. You obviously have the funding somewhere if you're sending it to the police. And the reason there is a lack of funding that you claim is because of the egregious, unreasonable police budget. So if we have the money to hire these new officers, you have the money to begin to better fund youth programs, mental health and substance use resources, re-entry programs for those who are being released from incarceration, housing for those who are experiencing homelessness, and countless other social issues, which, by the way, the consequences of which are then handed to the police, who are not equipped to handle that. So the police that we have currently, as the community has said, they lack restraint, they lack accountability, as we've seen, and they lack compassion. So I don't approve this ordinance to allocate more funding to the police. So I would like to refresh your memory about some ideas that you might want to spend some money on. So Troy is a food desert, as people call it, and the most affected are the BIPOC communities and the marginalized communities. So here's like an idea. Why don't we take that Stewart's that's been closed on 6th and Glen and just empty, boarded up? Why don't we make that into like a grocery store with fresh produce? Albany's doing it with the McDonald's on Madison and South Pearl. If they can do it, so can we. So there's no excuse for that. We shouldn't have to hike all the way up to the Waterford border or up Hoosick Street to get vegetables. Like, you shouldn't. And also another issue that we commonly face here in Troy is that we only have a limited number of ambulances. I think we only have 5 or 6. And it's not uncommon for all of those ambulances to be tied up between active calls and like cleaning their truck, after a patient. So I think that to allocate more funding to the fire and EMS department would be great to get whatever apparatus, whatever staffing that they need.
You have about 40 seconds to tie up, okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think that we could do something useful with funds towards a police department. And countless other people have said that mental health first responders would be a great addition to our city. I see that we have a lot of need for that. The police respond to a lot of mental health calls and a lot of issues that police respond to that might not be exactly mental health calls are from mental health and substance use issues. And if we had first responders that were trained that could be dispatched at the 911 call center level instead of police, then I think that would be a great way to start combating some of the reasons that we have police in the first place. So I think that the excuse that the police works with mobile crisis is a poor excuse at best, because mobile crisis is rarely available. They take forever to respond. I have like 5 sentences left. They have limited hours. I think they don't respond after 9 p.m. They only cover Albany, Schenectady, and Troy.
Thank you. All right. Next, Mara, we have Rhea Drysdale. We'll wait for Rhea to.
Yeah, and also then Mel Bromley also did log in, and she's also on the list, so she'll be after Rhea.
Okay, thank you.
Council President, I would respectfully request that when someone says she has 5 sentences more, that we give her the courtesy of finishing.
I didn't hear 5 sentences.
Because you're talking over her. Thank you.
I was trying to ask her to wrap it up, Council Member Steele. Okay, if you want to jump in, jump in. Don't jump in after. Jump in and ask me.
It's hard to talk over you.
You want to preside, like I said, run at large in 2 years, Councilmember Steele. Rhea, thank you for joining us. You are with the Finance Committee. Welcome, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to run through the quick points. You haven't specified in this ordinance that this is for community police officers. There is no job description that is currently in existence for the community police officer position, which is an incredible liability. There is no formation of diversity and inclusion committee, which should have been allocated and convened prior to hiring additional staff as was specified by the PRRC report. And there's also no PRRC oversight committee that has been formed as of yet. This was the first recommendation that was implemented and the last on that report. It is a shock to the system. The community programs that Troy currently offers, if the website is correct, include landlord training, trespass affidavit, narcotics eviction, nuisance abatement, and also child seat, car seats and SROs. What I hear are 4 programs focused entirely on the protection of businesses and property. Those are not community programs for people. And what I'm concerned about is that we are absolutely prioritizing programs that are going to protect, again, business owners who I understand have written in, but I am a business owner as well. And I'm telling you right now that as a growing business, this is not what I want. I have frequently recommended that the city of Troy look at the Chicago Crime Lab, where they have programs that have humanely invested in the community, and they are statistically significant and demonstrate a reduction in violence, crime, and incarceration, and the over-policing of Black and Brown communities. What we think is working is not in the city of Troy. Trust has been broken, and the problem with trust is it's rooted, your reputation as a police department and city is rooted in the expectation that someone has of your future behavior based on a past experience. So if I was Sue Steele, I would look at this and go, wow, Carmela's not being particularly nice to me. I doubt she'll be nice to me in the future as well. The Troy PD's reputation is broken because of the division that they have caused in the community. We hear it on this call. To be a police officer is a tough time. These are difficult times for police relations. Where is the humanity? Where is any concern for the community who is crying out in need? There are references to the silent majority, but the silent majority is what brought the Holocaust. The us versus them mentality of the police force and this administration is dangerous. And regardless of arguing the moral duty of a community to our neighbors, let's just look at the money. The city does not have a comparable police force, does not need to have a comparable police force to other municipalities to function. It's functioning fine as it is, but is suffering because of all of the lack of other services that this city needs to run. You need a fully operational city to serve the needs of community members and your employees, and you're operating in a dangerous position. There is no emergency preparedness and disaster response department, no public safety commissioner. Public works and fire service are understaffed or poorly utilized. You have no mental health response team, no youth and workforce department, and no trauma response team. Other municipalities next door to you have many of those departments. Comparable services are needed in Troy, not just an equal or larger police force. In the words of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. You have a city that is asking you to stop being neutral and to stop protecting the officers who swore a duty to protect them. By continuing to ignore the cries of marginalized voices in your community, you are responsible for the lack of trust and the tough times that your police force is experiencing. You remain silent and passive. Leadership is about having the courage to do what is right for the greater good, regardless of what the majority says or in fact doesn't say, because they're apathetic or don't have the knowledge or information or experience to say something otherwise. This morning, there was an elderly person in the city of Troy who was suicidal. Dispatch asked for 1 unit. Troy, an officer, K-9 unit, said they'd go along as well.
Right,
Overreactions.
About 30 seconds, just so you know. Okay.
Thank you. So let's just keep going. So I'm almost done.
Yep.
Overreaction is what the Troy PD does. When I had a gun that was found in my driveway, 6 officers showed up. 1 held the gun up, it was loaded, and pointed it at me while he was inspecting it without gloves. Overreaction and undertraining is what we are used to in the city. We need trauma response, and we should not be measuring the success of this department based on a reduction in index crimes or the number of officers per capita.
Thank you, Bria. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night. Mara, next.
Mel Bromley.
Okay. Hi, Mel. Thank you for joining us. You're with the Troy City Council Finance Committee. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, I sent a letter to all the council people and the mayor earlier today, but it was after the 3 p.m. deadline, so I'll read it. The letter was in response to a letter that the mayor replied to me following what I had written in before the PRRC report was filed. The mayor spent, it seems like a lot of time drafting his response to me, and I was grateful for that. And just want to note that although I'm grateful for that time and respect and feeling like I've been heard and responded to, I'm sure that not everybody gets that response. And working in North Central Troy, I've interacted with community police officers, and it's not uncommon for them to walk directly up to me, the person who doesn't live in the community but is clearly white and I present as middle class. And so, I think that there are some, I personally, in my interactions with community police, would say that the idea of community policing doesn't necessarily translate to the ideal of community policing. And now I'll just read my letter. Hi, Mayor Madden. I'm sorry for not responding to this email sooner. I'm grateful for the time that you put into it and wanted to take the time to respond thoughtfully, but now I'm in the position of having to email you about tonight's meeting and the proposal to hire 6 new community police officers. In my last email to you, I asked you to put into the PRRC report a loose timeline, thoughts about funding, and prioritization. None of those things were included in the final report, and now less than a month later, the city is poised to spend cash on the very last item in the report. And you guys had called that report a work plan. I don't, in my job, if I submit a work plan, it's always going to include a timeline, thoughts about funding, and prioritization. Anyway, you've always been able to claim fiscal responsibility as your legacy. With this move, Mayor Madden, you jeopardize that. You know that expanding the size of the police force is virtually impossible to reverse. Troy citizens will now be on the hook for 6 additional municipal employees, and police are routinely the highest paid city workers. 6 new salaries with pay raises and pensions that our children's children will be on the hook for paying. And how can you be sure that these roles will even stay designated as community police after your term ends? That same money could purchase a building in North Central to serve as a youth center and hire a full-time staff person to manage it. When you factor in how the $183,000 will expand in the coming years to support these officers, you could be serving many thousands of young people, providing structured and safe educational and recreational opportunities to young people will do more to prevent gun violence than any amount of dollars that could be put into policing, because police come to the scene after an issue arises. They do not address the root issues of criminal activity, such as generational poverty, housing instability, mass incarceration, food insecurity, etc. If you think that my opinions are the result of media bias, you should know that my stepbrother is a police officer. I have others in my family. And my mom has a role similar to Monica's in my home city of Stamford, Connecticut. When I tell my brother and my mom stories about Troy's police department, like how the family of an officer who died of COVID-19 was given survivor benefits, they just shake their heads. They are proud to work with a more diverse force that doesn't share Troy Police Department's history of abuse and settled lawsuits. In my last email, I told you about a young man I know who was zip-tied at his elementary school. Sorry. Zip-tied at his elementary school in Troy. You said that wouldn't happen today. What evidence do you have, and why should we trust it? Why should we trust you? It wasn't as long ago as you might imagine. Sorry.
Hey, Mel, I'm going to pause this for a sec, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
These things feel very differently when you have people in your life who are directly impacted. You should also know that I have interacted with Troy's community police officers several times. Most recently, an officer watched me table in Freedom Square for about an hour while he sat in his car. He eventually got out, introduced himself, handed me a business card, and then got back in the car. When people say they want more community policing, what is meant is that police officers who respond to calls should know us. They should be a part of our community. They do not mean that community relationships should be outsourced to a specific set of individual officers. We could have had a frank and educational conversation about community policing.
Mel, could I ask you to start wrapping it up? You have about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Thank
What
you.
it is and what it is not from your perspective, as well as the perspective of those of us who have interacted with them during the PRRC process. But the conversations we had were too few, too moderated, and too oppositional. At one of those meetings, you quoted a maternal health disparity, noting that Black women were more likely to die in childbirth in the US than in a specific underdeveloped country. I can't remember what you quoted. Then you noted that one reason you knew that statistic was because of your daughter's job in the medical field. What proactive research have you done into how to make Troy safer for all of us? What data do you have to back up adding 6 officers? Why is this plan so far along if it never came up during the PRRC process? Why don't you trust the community to have meaningful input on how to spend an extra few $100,000? You have said many times that Troy is suffering because federal dollars that supported programs we used to have disappeared. Now it's federal funding you weren't counting on that you've got in your pocket. In your last note, you explained that your ultimate goal is community-centered policing. One sentence left. I know you will agree that that is the wrong goal. The ultimate goal is a safer community. This money should go directly into the community, not into the police response to our community.
Thank you very much, Mel. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night. Okay, Mara, next on our list.
Of the people who signed up, that's the last one who was logged in. So the other ones have not joined.
Okay. All right, we'll move along. Hold on one sec. I have to log back on here. All right, we'll get right into the agenda and no local laws. We have ordinance 22, ordinance declaring remnant steam power generator to be surplus city property and authorizing the comptroller to sell it for $1 to the Hudson Mohawk Industrial Gateway to be used for educational purposes. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Steele. Discussion? I think we're all excited about this proposal. And some hefty dollars the city will be getting. Okay. All right. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Ordinance 22 carries 7-0. Ordinance 23, ordinance transferring funds within the 2021 general fund budget. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson. I am going to ask Brian Owens to talk for a couple minutes, but just real quick, the history of this, if folks may recall, I know myself, Councilmember Ash McPherson, Councilmember Gully, back during the budget, we had talked about trying to phase in 2 officers per zone, community police officers, specifically solely working on community policing efforts in that particular neighborhood, in that particular zone. At that time, it didn't pass. And during the PRRC, what I heard quite a bit, and I think everyone heard, was building bridges, building trust, breaking down barriers within our neighborhoods. And, you know, one particular group spoke, and they spoke about the community policing efforts. And one of the things that I heard loud and clear was, okay, community policing sounds great, but a police officer just stopping by at a ball game, or a police officer, a community police officer stopping by at one of the neighborhood meetings, we don't call that community policing. And one of the things I heard during the outreach efforts was, we want to see more of an investment. We want to see more of a connection, more of what somebody actually said tonight, part of the fabric of that particular community. You know, I kind of, when I first joined the council, and Brian knows this, he wasn't chief at the time, but I was calling for Park Walk and Talk. And I, you know, remember and recall the days of my dad, and I know we're not going back to those days, but everyone knew my dad on the beat, and my dad knew everyone on that beat. He knew people in the neighborhood. He was able to actually deter certain criminal activities from moving forward because he knew the ins and outs. He knew who were the bad seeds. And, you know, you're talking a handful of people, and he knew that everybody in that particular neighborhood or in that zone, that they wanted to work together to take back their streets. I'm really excited about this proposal. I'm really excited to partner with the mayor. It's bipartisan, and, you know, I think I'd like to hear from the mayor, and I'd like to hear from Brian. I think the folks that spoke tonight, they have very legitimate questions. The memo, the backup, did not say community policing. It is community police. And I know that the mayor, with a few of us, are real passionate about this. So Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then maybe we can talk to Brian, and thank you.
Thank you, Council President. And I thank those who spoke tonight. I do understand and appreciate their passion. I know that there are a number of people who would like to see the number of police officers decrease. And I know that they would like to see the funds that we currently spend on policing reduced and redirected to other areas. In fact, I count myself among them. I too would love to live in a community where there is less of a need for policing. And it pains me personally to see so many unmet social needs while so many resources across this country are devoted to policing and public safety. But I also know that our police department is called on for assistance over 55,000 times a year. These are calls from people who are in need. These are calls from people who are in crisis. These are calls from people who are desperate for help, and they're depending on us to show up. I've been attending neighborhood meetings across the city for more than 35 years now. And the one constant over all those years, whether it be South Troy, South Central, the downtown North Central, or Lansingburg, is that people want police officers walking in their neighborhoods. They want police officers to know them, and they want to know their police officers. And they want more than just police officers answering calls in their neighborhoods. They want relationships. And I did hear that again in the PRRC meetings. Several times every week, I have emotional conversations with residents pleading for more police presence. They're afraid to go outside. They're afraid to let their kids outside. I hear from people whose family has lived in the same building for generations, and they're giving up. They're moving out. And these comments come from people of color as well as people who look more like me. So, how do we not take the steps that we need to take and that we can take to alleviate their fears? Some have said that we should use those funds to hire social workers or crisis intervention specialists. And I don't disagree. Without a doubt, there are some outstanding examples of such programs working in other communities. And we're having discussions and we're speaking to some of those other communities. And we will over the coming months, try to assess the viability of similar programs here. That is one of the objectives in the PRRC report. But we've been warned that these are not cookie cutter programs. The successful ones have taken years to stand up and produce results. And if and when we're able to do the same here, and if we see the calls for police service decline, we can resize our police department accordingly. This is not a carved in stone situation. People have stated that, you'll never get rid of additional bodies once you hire them. I disagree. Elect the right people, elect people with a backbone who have a view toward the city and not their personal ambitions, but who will act in the best interest of the city. I'm a good example. I've done some things that have been very unpopular. It's right for the city. There are elected officials who can do that. Under the best of circumstances, there's always going to be a need for some level of policing. And no matter how good these other programs might be, there is no substitute for community police officers. We know that more police in a community reduce crime. There's empirical evidence that adding police reduces homicides, and that reduction is twice as high for people of color. And we also know from recent studies that a single instance of a positive contact with a uniformed police officer can substantially improve public attitudes toward police, including legitimacy and willingness to cooperate. President Obama's task force on 21st century policing identified building trust and legitimacy as a foundational goal to effective and just policing. And that's what community policing aims to do. Community policing is more than stop, walk, and talk. It's more than just walking a beat. When properly engaged, it will bring police and the citizens together to prevent crime and solve neighborhood problems. With community policing, the emphasis is on stopping crime before it happens, not responding to calls for service after the crime occurs. Community policing gives citizens more control over the quality of life in their neighborhood. Community policing means police become part of the neighborhood. This helps police get a better sense of the residents' needs and helps residents develop trust in the police. In essence, the community joins the police department. Data shows that where community policing is actively undertaken, residents express much more favorable opinions of the police. We are not talking tonight about merely adding more police officers. We're talking about a fundamental and foundational shift in policing in the city of Troy. We're talking about the first step in a full-scale commitment to the practice of community policing, a relationship in which the community and the police department work together to achieve a common goal of safer, better, and more welcoming neighborhoods for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you very much. And if folks are okay, I'd like to now shift over to our chief, and then we can open it up for discussion if okay. In chief, you know, if you don't mind, just following up on some of what the mayor stated, and what exactly do you see the 6 officers doing? I really want to talk about, this is not just adding, as the mayor stated, as I stated earlier, 6 police officers to the force. This is an investment in our zones, in our neighborhoods, block by block. Do you mind going into that, please?
Sure, thank you. Community policing absolutely is a philosophy, and we've tried to impart that on all of our members. While we have a community services bureau, and within that we have a community policing unit, that allows for flexibility that ordinarily patrol does not have in terms of time and ability to be more of problem solvers versus the reactionary response method. So as we have 2 and we've added a 3rd community police officer to that unit, we want to be able to have 2 community police officers per zone, ideally. And that will help in a number of ways. Assigning, if this is approved, assigning these new members to the community policing unit gives us the flexibility of assignment, days off, work schedules, and it also, more importantly, allows those assigned there the time to have conversations, to better and have more meaningful interactions with members of the community, business leaders, clergy, school officials, to take the time to try to solve problems versus just responding to the call, taking a report, and moving on to the next call that's waiting. I think this is important to the city. I think it's been demonstrated community policing. At one point years ago, we had a much more robust community policing unit. I think there was more than 8 at one point. So this is kind of returning to what we had. In terms of the question about where they're assigned, that's my understanding that these 6 spots, if they're approved, will be assigned to the community policing unit versus just adding to the total force. While they will increase the total staffing, they won't just generally be assigned to patrol.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. We'll open it up to members, and I'll open it up. I'm sure Brian and the mayor are more than welcome to answer any questions. Questions, discussion?
Council President?
Yes, Councilmember Cummings and then Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Thank you. Chief Owens, I'm trying to understand current staffing levels and sort of what's possible under current staffing levels and why you feel in order to do this work, more are needed. I'm going to share my screen real quick just so that we can look at some of the numbers and you can help me understand what is different or wrong. So this is my understanding. I don't actually know the time frames, but essentially you have a 3 shifts a day calendar.
Excuse me, are you able to email this? The device I'm looking at is very small print.
Sure.
If not, I'll try to zoom in as you point to a column.
Yeah, I can, let's see. Take a minute. Maybe we should go to another question while I email it to you.
Thank you.
Sure. Do you want to continue your questions?
It looks like Kim had a question. If you want to start, I can work on the email and then we can get back to this.
Okay, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
I don't really have a question as per se, as statements. As the chief mentioned several years ago, if not longer, we had a community police, and I think they were 12. I'm not 100% sure on that. And they worked very well within the community. These officers were out there interacting. Community members knew who the community police officers were. Friendships were formed. People were confident and felt safe talking to these officers as the officers, got involved in the communities with the neighborhoods. I represent District 2 from Hoosick Street to 111, River Street, sections of Oakwood Ave. And during my term of 30 some odd years living here in my district, many of the people that I speak to have all, especially over the last few years, if not longer, have asked for more policing. They want to feel safe on the streets. They want to have their kids out playing. We've had a lot of violence in our district, and I wasn't getting from the members, the taxpayers, the residents in this district, that they didn't want more police. They were saying they wanted more. They want to be safe. Everybody wants to be safe in their communities. And it bothers me when I have to hear that there was a shooting and somebody's dead. A young person is dead because of the senseless act of violence. And people in the communities want to be able to be outside. They want to be able to enjoy hanging out, talking to their neighbors. And it's not just in District 2. It's in with many districts that we have in Troy that we've got a lot of issues. I believe that community policing is a good thing for us. It's going to help start bridging that gap that I heard of people opening up and taking a sigh of relief, maybe, knowing that we're going to take the first step forward in trying to fix what's broken in Troy. Everybody knows that I'm always at odds with the mayor, and I don't agree with him on a lot of things that he comes up with and vice versa. And I have to say, this is something I truly believe is the right step. And the things that he was saying is true that we need to do. We've got a great city. We've got many great people in our communities and within our cities. And we're all trying to come together to fix what's broken. And I think this is a step forward. And I think that we've got a lot of work to do. And if we can fix and help within our communities, and like I said, many times people have said, they want more policing. And that's not just something we're making up. This is something that the taxpayers and residents are asking for. And I think the community policing is a step in the right direction. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ash McPherson. We'll get back to Councilmember Cummings.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Kim. Yeah. Certainly, there are a lot of really big challenges we're looking to address here, and certainly, I do hear this line a lot about folks are asking for more policing, and it just keeps ringing in my head. I don't remember where it was. A book I read somewhere this year was talking about how there's been this pattern in America where, yeah, communities continuously ask for more policing. They ask for more parks. They ask for more, certainly in your neighborhood, there's been calls for a community center for years, widespread calls. And yet continuously the things that people get are the more policing and not necessarily the rest of those important priorities. So that's our job, is to prioritize all the important and difficult work of a city, and try to make sure that we're accomplishing as much of it as possible in as efficient and as effective a way as possible. So yeah, to that end, I did want to go over just some of the numbers so I can understand where we're at, and why we feel additional staffing is necessary in order to accomplish this important goal. I think we all agree that it's very important to have a broader community policing philosophy, and having that implemented more broadly throughout our community. I will say, from my perspective, one of the primary benefits of community policing is that the officers making a first response to an issue are familiar with the neighborhood, familiar with the way that a neighborhood breathes. And I think having a dedicated group of people that's just a subset of the patrol officers undermines that goal to some extent, just because I would imagine that generally the community police officers won't be doing the first response calls, because again, they're working on the bigger projects. So I'm trying to understand how those two balance as well. But for starters, we'll just go into the current patrol budget and go from there. So I was just starting to try to map out the shifts. It seems like basically if you have people grouped into 6 groups, they're able to cover all possible shifts, working basically what ends up being like 32 hours a week for one group, and then 24 hours a week for the other group. And then that would, then you can double up on Fridays or whatever else, like I think you do. Is that roughly what happens right now? 4 8-hour shifts a week, Chief?
No, there's 5 8-hour shifts. So we have the 3 platoons, which would be the shifts. And so generally, depending on what zone they're assigned to or what their role is within patrol, they would either start at so the first day shift would be 7 a.m. or 7:30 for the early lineup, or 8 a.m. for the late lineup. And so we have the 3 platoons, so the 3 shifts, and then within each platoon, within each shift, we have 3 squads. So the squads, 2 squads will overlap each day, rotating days off, and then on Fridays, everybody's scheduled to work. So
so an individual works, like any particular patrol officer, how many shifts per week would they be doing, scheduled for?
in patrol, 5 8-hour shifts a week was what they'd be scheduled for.
Okay. So that's even more then. Okay. So if they're working 5 8-hour shifts, let's see. All right. Well, okay, so that just means there's more than I even thought. But so this is with just 4 8-hour shifts for 32 hours. It seems like it would take about 48 total staff members to cover the minimum manning of eight members on at all times. So it sounds like it'd be even less than that if they're working a full 40 hours a week. Which is great. Let's see. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to understand, if you've got minimum manning covered by, sounds like even less than 48 people, what's your average, how many people are on at all times? Or how much do you ramp it up and down? I know obviously sometimes you only have 8 and sometimes you have twice.
So for example, we'll take the day shift. So we'll say second platoon. For the patrolmen, we have in each squad 6 officers in each squad, 7 and 1. So for a total of 19 across the 3 squads. So that, for example, on any given day other than Friday, when 2 squads are scheduled to work, so rotating days off, so the squads will be different squads working together each day. So you could potentially start with either 12 or 13. So that would be the most you could have working in patrol in terms of patrolmen. So you'd be above the minimum staffing. Any time off or any person out of that mix would be that many less. And most often we are closer to minimum more than not. Additionally, a lot of times we will try to add in an evidence technician as a 9th spot. A lot of times on overtime if there's not sufficient minimum staffing, because the workload last year with COVID and then also with the response to crime scenes. A lot of that work obviously takes place at the scene of the incident, but then also that's a lot of follow-up work to be done. If the evidence technician is within the minimum staffing of 8, they're assigned to a zone. And so then wherever they're assigned to a zone and they're in the lab working, they're not available on the street for calls. And so that zone essentially has 1 officer assigned for that shift. So I'm not following your table necessarily.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's see. So under, so if you average probably more at the 12, 13 members at a time.
That's the max you could have scheduled to work on any given day other than the Friday. Friday, theoretically, you could have 20 or 21, or 19 or 20 patrolmen working. But again, on Fridays, a lot of times we'll have our scheduled training for weekly training because there's so many to begin with. It gives us the ability to take people out for training without creating callback, without creating overtime.
Gotcha. Okay. And then in terms of how many people you generally don't have available, is this about right? You have 7 on special assignment, SRO, community police, and traffic?
No. So if we have our existing current staffing levels of 131, of that, it's 93 patrolmen. So of the 93 patrolmen, currently we have 2 vacancies. So this is just taking off the top, and then we'll go into where people might be assigned. 2 vacancies, 2 leave of absence, 7 extended or long-term sick leave, 7 in the academy, and 1 new hire is on FTO. So they're not available for staffing. Then in terms of assignment for patrolman positions in patrol, there's a total of 58 spots to bid. And then non-patrol is 21. So the non-patrol would be Detective Bureau, task force positions within Detective Bureau, community police, SROs, traffic, SOS, and training and human resources.
Interesting.
So the ones not bidding in positions in patrol are not available for patrol staffing. eventually they could be available in terms of overtime for callback if it reaches them. But in terms of assignment for patrol, they're assigned to their, whatever their primary bid is.
Okay. So what was that number one more time on the total number on patrol?
58
58.
patrolman positions.
So that is not that far out of line from others. I guess if they're working full 40 hours, then that I'll have to do some math on that, but that's helpful. Thank you. And then the other questions I had were for Andy on the cost growth of this position. Is this about right? I didn't have the numbers for the pension, and I sort of guessed at some of this, but it looks like what we're committing to here is an initial 180 for the first year, which will then go up to over 300,000. But then as soon as they get to the police officer 6, which is I think what they spend about 2/3 of their career in, we're basically committing a little over $500,000 a year plus pension costs. Is that about what you're looking at?
I mean, I looked at it for the 6 months of this year. I would have to review it more in depthly once I get back to the office. 26 and beyond, I know you're assuming 2% after 23. That's unknown at this point.
Yeah.
Clothing allowance looks correct. Holiday pay is a formula, so I would need to verify that.
Yeah, I took that just as a
premium I don't know. Premium pay would be fixed at 2,400. That's the physical fitness test.
Gotcha.
There's no additional compensation there. The uniform, I would defer to the chief on that. But it's either clothing allowance, as it's currently constructed, the members of the PBA either elect a clothing allowance or a uniform voucher, so it's not both. I would just want to verify that with the chief though. Social Security, I'm assuming you multiply by 7.65. Pensions a complete unknown.
Okay. Yeah, I multiplied by 8.3% because that's what was done on the first one.
Social Security 7.65%. That's what was done on the budget amendment.
Okay.
Their budget transfer.
Maybe check that. But it might be different because it's only 6 months or something. I don't know what the difference there was, but it looked like it was at 8.3%.
But the way we calculated is 7.65, 6.2 for Social Security, 1.45 for Medicare.
All right, we'll adjust those. But at any rate, most of it is the salaries, which even without these last two increases, these officers will, in all likelihood, spend most of their career on the over $75,000 a year rate. Is that a correct assessment?
I would want to verify what you have on here. I costed it out for the last 6 months of 21. I did not do an analysis for 22 to 26. I would want to look at this before I agree or disagree with you.
That would be helpful. Certainly, I think generally it seems like when you're budgeting for officers, because of this very steep pay increase over the first 5 years, it's hard to look at it just in the first couple of years because it will close to double.
I understand that. I do think it's important to point out, though, you have on here in the total column for 22, $313,000, 23, 338. The budget difference, and I'm only speaking purely on how we're going to budget and how I'm going to look at this when I'm putting together the budget. The increase from 22 to 23 would be, for example, the increased salary costs or increased pension costs, the delta year over year. It wouldn't be an increase. You're not taking out the 44, it's just the delta year over year is the increase once it's in the budget. And I'm not.
But we are looking at
I'm just
basically
this is really factual of how we. So when we get to the budget in 22 or 23, it's going to be looking at what the difference is year over year.
Sure. The difference is obviously we're looking at increasing overall staffing in this, which is, so we need to be aware that we're committing about $10 million over the next 20 years, plus pensions.
Again, I'll take, you sent it, I haven't,
Yep,
if
I sent
you
it
sent
to
the
you.
spreadsheet, I'll look at
I'm
it when I
sure-
go back to the
I'm
office.
sure there's some errors. It's roughly based on percentages here, but I didn't include pension either, so it'll only go up from here. So if you could basically correct this and help give us a real number by the next meeting, that would be great.
I can do that.
Okay, and then just for my colleagues, I did a rough, we're looking at increasing the police. This is the overall police staffing line of 11,700,000 that we currently spend. So in the first year, that's a roughly 2.6% increase. And then it goes up from there. But either way, it's a relatively minimal increase for the overall policing budget. So when we think about the high impact items, what we could be doing as a city, we're looking at a relatively minimal increase here. Whereas for, this is an example of a social service agency in Troy that has a salary of items of about $2.4 million. We could be increasing their, salaries by, or their programming by 13 to 22%. So it's a question of sort of where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. Adding to social services or creating the community center that we've talked about so many times versus a relatively small redeployment in the police department.
Council President, I
Yes.
did just pull up the Schedule A quickly. That is 7.65%. The Social Security that's on the Schedule A. It's the total. It's the sum of permanent salaries, clothing allowance, holiday pay, and premium pay. I just
Okay,
wanted
7.6 on the sum of everything. Gotcha.
on everything except for the uniform number.
That makes sense.
Okay, Councilmember Cummings, you good with your questions?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's some more work to do, but really it's a question of priorities for the council.
Yep. Okay. Discussion, further discussion.
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Gully.
while I'm going to hold most of my comments till we get to the regular meeting in 2 weeks, I was just amazed by a statement tonight that one of the speakers mentioned, and it kind of disturbs me. They said guns in the hand of police kills. I just wonder what they think about the guns in the hands of the criminals that are driving around our streets, shooting randomly into our communities, killing innocent youth and injuring people in our communities, shooting holes in residents' cars and homes, creating fear amongst a lot of our citizens that are just law-abiding citizens. I haven't had one speaker that is against this process tell us how we can minimize or structurally get a better handle on these type of crimes that are going on. And I can't think of any better way than to get ears and people in the community that can talk to the residents, because we know they know more than they're saying. But it just frustrates me when we think about our safety officers as the implement of the crime instead of the protectors of the city. And I think that we have to understand that value that they bring to protect every one of us on a daily basis, and how many times they have to put their own lives in jeopardy to do that. I'll save the rest of my comments. I was just really, I guess I'll use the word frustrated by that comment.
Understood. Thank you, Councilmember Gully. Further discussion, questions?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Sue.
No, go ahead, Councilmember Zaluski.
No, I saw Sue was starting to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Steele.
Thank you. I want to thank all the folks who've emailed us. I'm sure I'm not the only one whose email blew up this week. And I think we had, I would say, just about an equal number from for and against adding 6 police. And I think that demonstrates just how divided our community is. And so I really am concerned about this resolution as we are presented at this point in time. I think it fails to take into account both sides who have taken the time to email and speak to us. And so I would hope that in the next week or two before our regular meeting, we're able to come to some sort of a compromise that includes both sides so that we don't have such a divided community. We talk a lot about trust and accountability. Jamming something through is not a good way to engender that at all. And so I would challenge my colleagues for us to discuss during the next week or two, before the next meeting, that we really sit down and talk and look at what the PRRC report called for. Look for let's develop a timetable where we can implement the oversight committee that was called for, the mental health, all of the items to give our community a sense of trust that we really are one in hoping to move forward. Now, I understand people are scared and are fearful, and I have tremendous empathy for that. I need to see that adding 6 police is going to affect that because I have to believe that you could have a policeman on every corner and someone could still squeeze through and shoot somebody. I would love for us to have a community policing program, but this resolution fails to even identify what a community police officer does. So again, going forward, improving on this product, let's develop a duty statement or a job description. Let's guarantee to the residents that we really are going to use this for community policing. Let's put it in the language. Let's not just say it. And as far as investing this kind of money, let's consider investing it in our community as well. We as council members are stewards of the taxpayers. And I don't know about you guys, but my folks are telling me they'd like their garbage picked up. They'd like their leaf bags picked up. They'd like the potholes filled. So I think that if we have this kind of money, then let's really look at how we can invest in our city services. And that can include police, but it needs to include other services as well. And it needs to allocate those in the most efficient way and in the areas of the city that most need it. So I just feel this is not, this proposal is ill-advised at this point. I don't feel that I have the data. I still don't understand the deployment of our police force, and I've seen it over and over again. It just doesn't, it's not adding up to me. And just arbitrarily saying, well, let's just add 6 more, that'll solve it. I'm not convinced. And I know I'm going to get whacked and people are going to say I'm anti-police. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying let's just take a deep breath and let's do this right. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Steele. Councilmember Zaluski.
Thank you, Council President. So interestingly, I'm going to be agreeing with points that Councilperson Ashley McPherson made and points that Councilperson Steele made. But first, I just want to say, when I first ran for office back in 2007, one of the issues that I ran on was Park Walk and Talk, PWT. I believed strongly then, as I do now, that policing works best when officers know the community that they're in. When you can build those positive relationships, it breaks down that us versus them barrier. And we heard that throughout the police reform meetings, that there's that barrier between the police and the community. And the best way to break that down is not to have the patrol cars just driving through a neighborhood, but having those officers right there. You know the officer by their first name. The officer gets to know the residents by their first names. You're interacting with the neighborhood, and that builds the trust that we talked about throughout that whole process, throughout the PRRC process. So I definitely support this concept. The timing is actually horrible, and it's great at the same time. It's horrible because we find ourselves in this moment where policing is under intense scrutiny throughout the country. And we've got residents who are telling us, we want to reduce policing, we want to reduce the impact of policing on communities of color. At the same time, we want to improve police and community relationships, and this particular program, the PWT program, having community police, does improve these relationships and does build the trust that we're looking for. So I understand why the mayor has put this forth now. We want to, it's one of the recommendations in the report, and we want to get started on it sooner rather than later. So I do understand that. To Kim's point, to Councilperson Ash McPherson's point, I was walking the North Central neighborhood just a few days ago. I actually stopped by someone's house who's having a dispute with their neighbor, and I decided to, walk through the streets and just talk to people. And she's 100% right. The people in that neighborhood are begging for police presence. And I talk to Black people, brown people, Hispanic, white, everyone in that neighborhood. I shouldn't say everyone, I don't want to exaggerate. Most of the people that I spoke with in that neighborhood are asking for a greater police presence and related to me stories about what they're seeing in their own neighborhood and how they don't feel safe. Very specific stories. They brought their kids out and said, I want my kid to stay alive. I can't have my kid getting hit with a stray bullet. People were visibly upset and emotional over it. And it made me emotional as well. So I happen to live in the East Side neighborhood. We don't ask for a lot of police. It's a pretty quiet neighborhood. But my job is to make sure that I'm looking out for all citizens in Troy, not just my own neighborhood. And I've got to listen to what these residents are asking for. They do want to see police. And I said specifically, I said right now we're considering this program of having police walking in the neighborhood, and they said absolutely, we would welcome that 100%. So I know we hear speakers saying that when you put police in neighborhoods, it's bad for communities of color. I'm telling you that I'm out there in communities of color, and they're not saying that. They're not saying, oh, we don't want to see the police. There are a few, of course. But for the most part, the people that I talk to welcome this and want to eliminate the gun violence that is plaguing this city right now, where we have to have fundraisers and naming streets after dead kids. That's got to stop. That's got to stop. And if this can do that, then we've all got to support that 100%. To Councilperson Steele's point about the legislation, I agree that this is specific. We want to add community police officers that are engaged in Park Walk and Talk, and the legislation doesn't specify that. I would prefer to have that explicitly stated in the legislation, that we are hiring officers to do this. So I do want to have a conversation with the mayor. We should probably meet sometime after this meeting to talk about how that legislation should read. But this is not about just adding 6 police officers, at least for me. This is not about just adding officers to the police force. This is about implementing a very specific program that we are in dire need of. And I want to make sure that what we're voting on ultimately, tonight is obviously just the introduction, and we have 2 weeks to mull this over. But I want to make sure that this is exactly what we're voting on, is the Park Walk and Talk program, and having more community police officers. I did talk to the mayor. I'm sorry, I messaged the mayor about how soon we can get this implemented, because I understand new officers have to go through the academy. And I won't talk about the specifics that the messages that we exchanged right now, because I want to give the mayor the opportunity to talk to everybody about it. But I'm hopeful that we can actually start implementing this over the summer, using some policing resources that we'll have available to us, and then see how this works. I want to see how having more officers walking in the neighborhoods will actually impact those neighborhoods in a positive manner. I want to see that. And of course, we're going to hit, we'll have a budget season coming up in November, and this council, all of us will be voting on that budget. So, we want to see results, and, this summer would be a great time to what I'll call beta test this program. So I think that's what I want. Oh, the other thing I just wanted to mention, a lot of people keep sending us links to this 2016 FBI crime report, where it talks about, it has a lot of stats, and the stats I have to assume are accurate. And they say that the Northeast on average, I think for cities that are I'm just looking at it now, 25 to 50K, the average is 1.9 police officers per 1,000 residents. And then if you're 50K to 100K, it's 2.0 in the Northeast. And we're right in the middle of that. So maybe we're at 1.95, let's say. But that's the Northeast. So I drilled into the numbers a little bit more, because, everyone's saying, oh, well, Troy's out of whack with the number of police officers per 1,000 residents. So I brought up the FBI data. First of all, I moved to 2019 because there's more recent data than that, than the links that people have sent to us. And the 2019 data, I drilled down into New York State municipalities. And if you drill down into New York State municipalities, you'll find that Troy is pretty much right in the middle. If you look at Albany, they're 3.0 officers per 1,000 residents. Binghamton, which actually I compare us to Binghamton quite a bit because our populations are very, very similar. They're at 2.9. Elmira's 2.7, Johnstown 2.9, Kingston 3.1, Poughkeepsie 2.9, Rochester, a much bigger city, 3.6. I think that's the largest number of officers per 1,000 in the state of New York. And Troy, we're at 2.6, and if we add 6 officers, we'll be at 2.7. And you can go down all those stats. I can certainly make these available to the whole council. I took a bunch of time to type this up and throw the numbers through a calculator. So I just think, I understand the Northeast, the survey was about 10,200 different cities. But if you look at New York State and the cities that are very similar to us, including Albany, Schenectady, Cohoes, Watervliet, et cetera, we're pretty much in the middle, even maybe a little bit on the low end compared to similar cities. So I just wanted to clarify the record on that the stats don't show that we are a bloated police department. And of course, the other thing I wanted to mention is the NPR article that everyone's been passing around. It was published, I think, yesterday, right in the middle of all the discussions we're having. And the article is titled, "When You Add More Police to a City, What Happens?" If you haven't read it yet, I suggest to the entire council, please read this article. It's really interesting. The research is done by a notable Black scholar. And overall, it's really interesting because everyone's kind of finding things that comport with their own argument. But for me, and I guess that I'm arguing that Park Walk and Talk and community police officers and having more of them will help our neighborhoods. And that part of the argument they're saying that when you add officers when you expand the police department, they call it serious crime, which I assume involves violent crime. Serious crime does go down, and Black lives are saved at twice the rate of white lives. That was one of the takeaways from that. But there's other pieces to that article too that show other sides. But I found that to be interesting, and it was just strange that it was published yesterday as we were receiving dozens of emails from the community. So in any case, I'm going to support this to pass this through to the May regular meeting. I do want to see potentially some language changed in terms of making the focus on community policing. But this is a program that I've believed for many, many years we do need to have in the city of Troy, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Zaluski. And, to your point, two quick things. I did want to ask the chief in terms of redeployment. I know that there's been a little discussion, and I know Councilmember Cummings, requested, can our workforce be redeployed? I know you and I have had many, many conversations about this, but I'll let you answer, Chief.
Thank you. Given the available personnel right now, it'd be very difficult to redeploy personnel without the necessary loss of services and some other. For example, this last bid, we added a third CPU officer. That position came out of our detective bureau. So that's one less person in the detective bureau to follow up on any number of crimes. It could range from, property crimes up to homicide. So there's a opportunity cost to every change we make. So So to answer the question, could we move people from another unit? Yes, but then you lose the capabilities of another unit or you reduce it significantly. So that was a calculated move on our part. We're going to have one less detective available with the caseload, but we're trying to add to community policing because, again, community policing is a philosophy. We push it, but the community policing unit allows us flexibility in deployment, and they're also not responding primarily to calls for service. So those officers in CPU have a little bit more time to spend on community problems, whether it's quality of life or more involved problems that we can bring in other city resources or other governmental resources, or even community partners, mental health. So those officers can help, but the CPU officers also help patrol, because if they can focus on some of more of those involved issues, then patrol has hopefully, if we have more CPU, more time between their calls for service. Now, maybe the zone officers can also have a little bit more time to engage with residents, the community in between calls. It's tough. I mean, we have a limited pool of people. We have demands across the board, whether it's patrol, which is our primary function. That's our response. But our specialty units, our detective bureau, the drug unit, traffic, SROs, those are all valuable as well. So how do we balance that? And that's where we stand with the numbers as we deploy now. There was a question about job descriptions. The positions all have job descriptions. Every time we put out a table of organization, which is how we do our bid for positions, that's included in there, and I can certainly share that with the council or whoever needs that. My understanding of this proposal was that it was geared toward community policing spots. I didn't see that it wasn't included, so I would agree that if that's the intent, that should be specified. I support that.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you, Chief. And to kind of, wrap this up, I think all of us, we all want our city to be safer. We all want what happened over the last year, whether it be Aisha, whether it be MJ. And, I want folks to know this is very timely. MJ's mom, as many of you know, last week, Howard Gross from Ironworks over on Campbell Ave, the community came out incredibly for MJ. Over 1,100 chicken dinners sold, $17,000 on just a 10-day notice for this fundraiser. It was unreal. And it just shows just the love and the passion and what I feel is really One Troy coming together, but coming together for the wrong reasons, as Council Member Zaluski mentioned and Kim mentioned. But saying that, MJ is expected home in the next week to 10 days. And MJ, his mom actually called today to ask, because they're trying to get MJ home. And unfortunately, his house is not handicap accessible. So we're all kind of pitching in, and Quality Auto is doing some things, Bonded Concrete, Calman, just a bunch of folks coming to the table. It's unbelievable what's happening behind the scenes. But MJ's mom called today, and she needs the bathroom door widened. So I am putting that out there. If anyone's out there that could help the family, because MJ can't come home until the bathroom doors widen. So we're looking for someone on short notice to get MJ home. But saying that, I just know, as the chief stated, as all of us stated, cops on the beat make a difference. There's no two ways about it. This legislation needs to be improved in terms of what it states. I support that wholeheartedly, and we have to work with the mayor to ensure that these officers are in the community policing unit, that they are on the streets, park, walk, and talk, but not just park, walk, and talk. Hopefully walk and talk and attending neighborhood meetings. And as the mayor stated, these are going to be problem solvers. We throw statistics out there, et cetera. We see it day in and day out. We talk to our constituents, go over to 3rd and Congress for 2 hours from 7 to 9 p.m. It's disgusting. It's unacceptable. This is not the city of Troy that I was born and raised. This is not the city of Troy that I know, that my dad, and I know I keep going back to him, but that guy, it was incredible to this very day, the people that he helped by walking the beat, the people he kept out of jail, whether they were smoking a joint, whatever, he kept them out of jail because he wanted to give them a second chance. That's what we're going to see from a true community policing effort. We are going to see relationships. We are going to see bonding. We are going to see hand in hand our officers working with our residents to build those bridges, build the trust that we all want and that we've heard over the last 4 years for me, over the last 40 years. I can't applaud this effort enough. I want to thank the mayor for partnering with us, putting politics aside. I did, for the record, Senator Jordan, Assemblymember Ashby also sent letters of support for this effort. It's in your mail. I'm not sure if you received it yet. And just real quick on the last note, somebody mentioned to me earlier that police are not human services. I completely disagree with that statement. Our police are the human services. And if we utilize them right, like back in the day, and no, we can't go back, and times are more complicated and more guns, et cetera. But guess what? We can build that trust. Our police are human services, and we need to have that mutual respect, and that mutual respect will come along. I'm confident. So thank you for listening to me. And anyway, obviously I'm supporting this effort. So further discussion, questions?
Council President?
Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
I did a little bit more updates to the spreadsheet based on the information. And just wanted to do a quick follow-up on another question that I hadn't gotten to. So it looks like basically you've got 24 total time slots that need to be filled, times 8 people per time slot. Bare minimum, obviously you need coverage for overtime and for more busy shifts and everything else, but bare minimum would be 39 people to cover all of those shifts. So you're only 18 more than that, which strikes me as potentially reasonable in terms of covering vacation time and boosting staffing during busy times, etc. So just wanted to share that with folks. And then related to that is this spreadsheet that I didn't get to talk about. just looking at the calls per service per service for 2019 and 2020. This is out of the PRRC report. As well, it breaks down by domestic calls and mental health care calls, but we don't have breakdowns on other types of calls. So I was wondering whether we could get more of a breakdown on the other types of calls, as well as some sort of sense of what how much time is being spent on different types of calls. Because so if we are just at minimum manning, the average over the course of a year would be you've got an hour and 20 minutes per call in 2019, or 2 hours and 2.2 hours over the per call in 2020. Now, of course, calls don't come in on an average time scale. I'm sure there are peaks and troughs in that that call volume. But I wanted to understand sort of, if the average time you have per call is between 1.3 and 2.2 hours, does the average call take anywhere near that amount of time? I assume some calls take 10 minutes and some calls take hours. And I don't know that if you have data on that now, that would be great. Or if you have, if you could get some data from the 911 call center before the next meeting, I think that would be helpful as well. So first I'll throw it to the chief to just discuss that sort of average time per call.
I think you said it best, when a call could take 10 minutes or several hours. So I don't know what the exact average time per call would be. We can certainly work with Rensselaer County, our dispatching services, to see if they can break out both the types of calls into more categories, and also to see if there's a way to calculate that time.
Okay, that'd be great.
We'll
Sort of
work on that with
what
them.
I'm hoping for here, and I have no idea whether or not it will be possible, but I have heard anecdotes of times when it's not as busy and you send 5 officers to a call because they're available, which I understand, but I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity to, when it's a less busy time and most officers are not on a call, rather than patrolling for traffic violations or everyone going to each call, is there an opportunity, if there are 6 patrol officers available, you say, okay, 2 of you park and walk around your block. And then as soon as, that availability drops and folks are out on calls, the folks who are walking might head back towards their cars. But more of a rotation to encourage, or policy to encourage those patrol officers who are patrolling each neighborhood to do that, jump out and it's amazing how much more of a sense of what's going on a block you get by walking through it as compared to driving through it. I'm sure folks have seen me walking around downtown and all over in the middle of the night. And you learn a lot by just being present and listening and walking around. So I know that's something that you've talked about in terms of that philosophy of community policing. But I'm just wondering whether there are, those 20 minute to an hour periods when there's a lull. How do we get more parking and walking out of the general patrol during those lulls?
Absolutely. I agree with you. When you're out on the block, first of all, you do see things up close and personal, and you have a better connection if people are out and you're able to talk to them. In fact, I think a lot of officers would prefer to be on a walking post. But practically speaking, like you said, the calls aren't in a static line. So it is peaks and troughs, but also the geography of the city. So for example, zone 1 geographically is a huge zone. So if the officers are parking and walking a block, which is fine because they're not going to go more than a block to be able to get back to their car to respond, then you're not patrolling anywhere else in that zone. So while there is absolutely value to being out on foot, there's also a value for that patrol car to be going to as many of the streets in a zone as they can, at least once throughout their 8-hour shift. And honestly, most days, they're probably not getting on nearly every street. They might not even get into every neighborhood within their zone, depending on the call volume. So again, I know the concern is adding more police officers, but that's the way we gain interactions, is by having more officers and having that time to do it. And necessarily we need to increase the numbers. in my opinion.
Okay, well, yeah, looking forward to some more of a breakdown from the 911 center. That'll be helpful in further discussion, but that's very helpful. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Some good discussion. Councilmember Zaluski, if you could send us that data, I think that'd be really helpful.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. And Councilmember Cummings, thanks for the breakdown. And obviously, we'll continue working over the next 2 weeks. And Mayor, we'd like to kind of fine tune this legislation, at least for the ones that supported to ensure, we are getting community policing. Okay. Cool. All right. Further questions, discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Ordinance 23 carries 5-2. We'll move on. Ordinance 24, ordinance amending the 2021 general fund budget. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson. Discussion? Andy, I believe this is some COVID funding that was unused, correct?
Correct. It's the remaining balance of the COVID grant the police department had in 2020 that we're just rolling over now into the 21 budget.
Very good. Questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, ordinance 24 carries 7-0. Ordinance 25, ordinance authorizing the reconveyance of real property acquired by NREM foreclosure. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson. Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, ordinance 25 carries 7-0. Ordinance 26, ordinance authorizing leases of parking spaces in the Fifth Ave parking garage for a 5-year term. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson. Discussion? Quickly, I had asked the deputy mayor, I had thought that there was a waiting list, how many spaces are leased now, but these, I believe she stated that they are the same spots, nothing more, nothing less. And I'm not sure, Andy, what were we receiving per space prior? Was it the same 75 or did that go up?
I would have to check on that.
Okay. Further questions? Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
Let's see. I know there have been some concerns in the neighborhood with these vehicles idling or just waiting in the alley and blocking off people's access to their alley garages. Is there any chance we could add a clause into this lease to discourage that, or has that been dealt with through other means?
Maybe
I guess Monica's not here.
maybe,
So
the
we just-
mayor might be able.
Yeah, I'm, hold on a second, let me get my face. I wasn't familiar with that problem. That is something we could talk to them about.
Great. Is it worth looking to add explicitly to the lease, or just make sure it's addressed in other methods?
I don't know if it needs to be added to the lease. I guess I'd speak to Rick about that, but you're not supposed to be leaving idling vehicles anyway, so maybe.
Yep.
I think there's a vehicle and traffic issue with that.
Agreed.
We can talk to them. I'm sure they'll be responsive.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a note.
Awesome. Good point, Councilmember Cummings. Thank you. Further discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, ordinance 26 carries 7-0. Ordinance 27 is withdrawn. Ordinance 28, ordinance authorizing and approving the filing of the City of Troy's application for funding pursuant to the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, the McKinney Act, Emergency Shelter Grant Program, and the Home Investment Partnership Program, and designating the mayor as the authorized representative of the City of Troy for such purposes. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I will make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson. Discussion?
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Zaluski.
I just want to note that in my time on the council, I'm looking at the CDBG amount. Now we're down to basically 1.8 million. Boy, has that dropped significantly over the years, which is unfortunate. I guess the only good news is we are getting the 45 million in ARP funds, which should help the city out. But it'd really be nice if the federal government could get our CDBG funding back up to where it used to be.
Yeah, even close. Totally agree. That has certainly been cut over the years. Some restorations are needed in South Central Italy. Target area is getting the 1.3, so that's huge.
Yes, I agree, and so do my neighborhood leaders.
Oh yeah, they're excited. Okay, further discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, ordinance 28 carries 7-0. Resolution 28, resolution to honor Geneva Pompey and to designate the public park at 7th Avenue and Ingalls Ave as Geneva Pompey Park. Do I have a motion? Oh, sorry, Council President Mantello, Councilmember Ash McPherson. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings. Discussion, I'll hold it for the regular meeting unless Councilmember Ash McPherson.
I'd just like to say, well, I didn't have much to do with the park when it first came to fruition. Naming this park after Geneva Pompey, after the many conversations, and we're going back, I don't know how many months, possibly a year back with her name on this park. I think it's a good thing to do. From our understanding, the woman pays attention to the park a lot, and a lot of children she's watched growing up there. So I'm excited over this. So thank you.
No problem. Sounds like we have to invest in some freeze pops for her fridge.
Lots of them.
Yeah, Kevin Pryor, the first thing he said, she lets everybody at her house to have freeze pops. I say, okay, well, that's good enough for me. But yeah, we can talk about Geneva and what's going on in that park in 2 weeks. Okay, cool. Further questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, resolution 29 carries 7.
Sorry, you froze. I didn't get to say I don't know if you heard me or not. Everybody was froze.
No problem. Resolution 28 carries 7-0. All right, resolution 30, resolution accepting a Restore New York grant for the renovation of 701 River Street and authorizing the mayor to sign a sub-recipient agreement with Redburn Development. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson. And I see that Steve Strikeman has joined us. Steve, can you fill us in on this really cool and exciting project?
I've been with you all along. So actually, this is old money. This is a resolution that should have occurred a while back, but now that the project is nearing completion and the drawdown's about to happen, I toured the facility last week with the mayor. Of the 77 units, 50 are already rented out, which is about 2/3. They're 1 and 2 bedrooms. They're gorgeous apartments, gorgeous view, and it's nice to see that development occurring there, especially with the school a block away, those apartments there. And so this is a $1.8 million grant. It's a pass-through. So it basically, we apply on behalf of Redburn to get this grant. The money would come to the city, and then the money would go on to Redburn. Andy will be back with you to create a budget line for it at the next finance meeting, but I wanted to get this piece out of the way.
Okay. Are there questions, discussion? And just so folks are aware, I do hope to have I will actually be having a finance meeting before our regular meeting. Hopefully we'll have the NIP grants, and I know a couple other things need to happen. So if you want to get that line and hook up with Andy, that's fine, Steve. Okay, for that meeting.
Okay.
If you want.
I don't know if Andy will have it by that time. He's just coming back then, so it'll probably be later in May. But
Okay.
thank you.
Yep, no problem. Steve, what's the estimated time of the opening?
Well, there's people moving in. I think people are starting to move in, so they're open, and they should be fully. I think by May, basically, they're expecting to be completely leased up by the end of May.
Okay, cool. Further questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Resolution 30 carries 7-0. Thanks, Steve. Resolution
welcome.
31, resolution of the Troy City Council authorizing acceptance of a grant from the Hudson River Valley Greenway to create a trailhead for the Empire State Trail. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson, discussion. I must tell you, I'm super, super excited about this. I used to work, as some of you may know, for the Hudson River Valley Greenway, and, you know, to see 10 years ago, 15 years ago to today, and the Empire State Trail coming together, and in my own backyard, actually having a connection to that trail, it's really, really cool. So anyway, I'm really excited.
I never knew you worked for the Greenway.
Oh my gosh, I never told you about that. I can fill you in if anyone would like. Okay.
Send us an email, will you?
No.
Well, I can go back to 2000 when I was first appointed. No, I'm kidding. All
Where's
right.
the mute button?
Oh, the question.
Yeah,
cut her off.
All right. Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Resolution 31. You sure you don't want to talk about? Okay. Resolution 31 carries 7-0. We will move on. I apologize. Boop, boop, boop. That's a very long agreement. Resolution 32, resolution of the Troy City Council authorizing the acceptance of a grant from the Capital District Transportation Committee for a linkage study of the Federal Street Corridor. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson. Discussion? Steve, where are we?
We are. This is an outgrowth of the implementation plan grant that we presented in January of 2020 to the public at Revolution Hall, as well as up in Lansingburg at the Veterans Club. And basically, it's an outgrowth of that. It's to redevelop the Federal Street corridor, including looking at the feasibility of a roundabout at the intersection there, and potentially a roundabout at Federal and Fifth, narrowing Federal Street down and restoring it to what it should have been. It was widened when the new bridge was built, and it really creates a barrier between downtown and the Headley district. So this would really provide a great opportunity to improve that area. The great thing about these grants, just like the last one we just approved, it was an outgrowth of the Congress Street Bridge study, which is you're going to be presented on next week. And this is so this study will line us up to get additional funding and put us in line to get on the state tip or find other sources that are out there.
That's what's, oh, Councilmember Cummings.
You said federal and fifth, or are you saying, is that federal?
Federal
and
and sixth. I'm sorry, federal and sixth.
Double
I
checking.
did say federal and fifth. Yes.
So yeah, that answers my second question, which is making sure that this includes that federal and sixth intersection, which has of course been a major issue for residents for a long time, especially the residents in the senior housing at that corner that get isolated by the far too many lanes in that road. So certainly I think there's a lot of opportunity for narrowing that down, and this will be welcome news. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, really exciting. Obviously, opening up our waterfront and making connections into the downtown and the main street and our neighborhoods is key. On that note, I will tell you, Steve, like I want to say like 15, 20 years ago, I would look at these small grants and kind of say planning, schmanning. But these grants are key, as you said, to get us on the tip, to get us in line for some of the bigger grants. So, as long as it's not sitting on the shelf, it's all good. So keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you. Will do.
Okay. Further questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Resolution 32 carries 7-0. Resolution 33, we have in front of us, resolution in Tri-City Council authorizing the acceptance of a grant from the, I apologize. We just did that, 32. All right, sorry, resolution, hold on one sec. Okay, 33, bond resolution of the City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of $450,000 serial bonds to finance the reconstruction of various bridges in the city. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I will make a motion.
Motion, Council Member Zaluski, do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second, Council Member Cummings. Discussion. Andy, want to fill us in? We're a little short, I take it, on the Campbell Ave Bridge.
We are. My understanding in talking with Aaron Vera is that essentially the federal government, the DOT association with this project is saying that the funding needs to be increased prior to us bidding the project based off of the engineering estimates that came in. Normally, what we do is we get the bid in and see where we're at, and if we need additional funding, we're being told that it has to be the opposite direction this time in order to continue to move forward. So we brought this resolution forward based off of the engineering estimate and what we're being told from DOT. If it passes, obviously, then we'll move forward with bidding the construction portion of the project. The project is at least 80% reimbursed as well from the federal government.
Right. Yep. Okay, so what are we looking at? About 450? Is that it?
Correct. So I tried to get it with, what I wanted to avoid here was a situation where it came back middling it, right? That we get, if we do 400 and it comes back at 425, then we're going to be back here having the same conversation
Right.
again. So just to give us that threshold to hopefully only bring this forward once, and obviously only issue what we need out of this tranche as we move through the next issuance.
Yeah, and it looks like the water lines increase the project from Aaron's memo.
I believe so, yes.
All right. And keeping the bridge open at all times. Okay. Half of the bridge, I should say, half of it. All right. Further questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, resolution 33 carries 7-0. Resolution 34, resolution authorizing the mayor to submit the City of Troy's annual one-year action plan with a 5-year strategic consolidated plan to the U.S. Department of HUD. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, we'll give it to Councilmember Gully. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, resolution 34 carries 7-0. That concludes our agenda this evening. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski, second.
Second, please.
All of us.
Member Gully and everyone. Good discussion tonight, everyone.
Yeah, Council President,
Yes,
since we
Councilmember.
should have a discussion before we vote on adjourning, this is for the mayor, actually.
Uh-oh.
Tomorrow morning on Lexington Ave, I believe there's street cleaning scheduled. One of my constituents has, for the past three weeks ago, scheduled a paving for their sidewalk and the driveway. So they're going to need to park in the street. And then just a couple days ago, the signs went up saying, hey, there's going to be street cleaning. So they weren't aware of that. How can we handle that situation?
I have no idea, but we'll figure it out. Why don't I have Chuck get in touch with you? So what's the address?
Do you want me to
Lexington?
say- You want me to say it on the meeting, or do you want me to, why don't I
No,
just
why
call?
don't you message me? And I'll let Chuck know. I don't see why there's no reason why we could just go around them.
Okay.
If he's not paving the sidewalk. Did you say he was paving the sidewalk?
Paving, getting driveway redone and sidewalks redone in front of their house, yes.
Okay. All right, why don't you send me the address?
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. I thought maybe the mayor would put on his vest and maybe his hard hat and get out there and maybe redirect traffic.
No, it's too cold.
I really quick before we close, I want to thank the chief for joining us this evening. And Andy, you being a new dad, thank you for taking the time out of your paternity. So paternity leave. Thank you. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good night, everyone.